Hello, everybody. We are live with Workshops for Moms. We're at our monthly parenting panel, and what we have are topics of interest to our community. And we have experts here that share ideas to support your work of being a mom. So that's what Workshops for Mom is all about. And we'll introduce some of our guests here. Though, first, when we dive into our back to school, for the next hour, these experts, some of them are moms, teachers, professionals, and they're going to share their favorite tips and advice for getting back to school in those routines smoothly. And in our Facebook group for Workshops for Moms, we've posted 10 important reminders about the things you might not think that you should be doing. And as we get them all going, you're going to cross off one a day from your to-do list to help make it a wonderful back to school season. And I'll be sharing those tips with you as well. So let's meet our guests. We have Michelle DeKaiser. She's a mom of 3 school-aged kids who also taught school for 8 years. So she's been on both sides of this parenting and teacher fence. Willa Doreen LeBlanc is a reading specialist, and she's going to be joining us shortly. She's driving, so as soon as she's in a safe spot, she'll be jumping on. And she's taught over 40 years in public schools, and now she's in private practice. Reading is a huge thing for our kids to be doing in schools. Okay, so then we have Irene Martinez, and she's a occupational therapist with over 20 years of clinical expertise, helping busy families adapt to having a tiny baby in their midst back to school season. Tracy Cheney is a grandma and veteran teacher, having taught in 14 schools, from rural schools to inner city schools and even private school settings. And I am Ryan Roberts, your mentor. And I'm a mother of 3, and I've certainly had my share of back to school fun when my kids were younger. So let's get started, everyone. Our first for the panel, let me ask you just kind of a speed round of questions to what is a favorite fast tip for making the school routine run smoothly for our moms? So it can be for a day routine, something maybe a night routine, or even a homework routine that other families could implement. So speed round, what would be a tip on a routine to help our moms?
Well, I'll go because we had 2 teachers in our house, plus raising family and having grandkids live with us. And our number one tip is, when you think about it, you go put it in front of the front door. So it gets to be a pile, but we can't get out the door without everything. And trying to respond immediately when the thought comes to you, because maybe it comes to you, at 4:30 in the afternoon for the next morning, and trying to keep that in your head and remember that. And then there's going to be 10 other things. It's especially with kids, we think we can give them lots of instructions, but 1 or 2 is probably it. So that's my tip: trip over everything in front of the front door.
This is actually a new one that I'm going to try this year that I heard, and so I want to throw that one out there. But when the kids come home from school, whether it's a bus or however, that you don't know how their day's been, and sometimes we bombard them with our questions or things. And so I haven't quite made it yet, but I was going to put a chart together of like, how do you feel right now? And they can just point to it if they don't feel like talking, or they don't feel like, to open up that line of communication, and then having some food next to it. So a lot of times they're hungry or hangry. And honestly, when we do our swim schedule, when the girls start coming out, a lot of times we try to have the dinner ready right away. Like it's either in the car for them to go, or it's dinner is ready on the table before the activity. We used to do it the other way around. And that moment off the bus was so anxious for everyone. But the moment we put food in front of them and just give that a different idea of how to give them the power of how they enter the door versus you taking that from them and giving them some control over it. I think that will be really useful. But food, definitely a great way. Snack, something before homework. Get them happy.
Good ones. I will take a run at this. One is catch up with your nervous systems first and foremost, because we need that time to breathe. We need that time to reset, and we need that time to connect. So one of the wonderful gifts about having a new baby in the house is they make you do that quite often. So my main advice for parents trying to adjust to different schedules is bring your expectations down and make sure that your schedule has lots of times for recess, meaning connection and breaks. And we do that a lot at Best Baby Beginnings, but just learning how to reset the nervous system, especially before bedtime. You know, there's a few tricks that we do that we don't really need language or anything like that, but just connection to your nervous system through skin to skin, rocking, different things that we can do to relax that nervous system and connect with each other, whether we're 4 or 0.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. And just breathe into that. And you guys are sharing so many tips already. I can just feel relaxing because most of the time when you think about back to school, it feels hectic and so I like that, Irene. Just nervous system. We've got some good routines. I love that, Michelle, about picking, the feelings. You don't even have to talk about it, though, knowing where they're at. And then Tracy's, if you think of it, put it in front of the door. Oh my gosh. Thank you all. So specifically a question for Michelle. So you've been a classroom teacher, so from that point of view what the parents should or be doing or hopefully doing at home, and now you're the parent at home and you have 3 kids, which probably is some struggling from now and then. So just wondering how you balance that idea between the shoulds and what your kids should be doing and what actually is happening.
Well, that was a big struggle for me for a really long time in terms of what my kids should be doing. For instance, I used to worry so much about my son and that he should have friends and should be doing these different things, right? And so it created this huge tension between us, and actually lost some of the connection that we could have had. Rather than what I've started to do is shift my focus to what are the things he's good at. And so all of a sudden looking at, he loves cooking. And so all of a sudden we start doing that. So this summer, I kid you not, 2 weeks in a row, he meal planned the entire dinner and pick the grocery shopping list. All I do is take him to the grocery store, be a sous chef sometimes. But I think when we start looking at what they're good at and what they enjoy doing and focusing on that aspect rather than what we think they should be doing, because they're getting that at school enough. They're getting at, like, if they're not good at math, if they're not good at reading, like those are things they really have to focus on, the things they need to improve. At home, we really need to focus on what do they enjoy doing and what do they really like doing. And for my daughter, it'd be drawing and painting and writing, right? So really just encouraging those aspects, but really looking for that identification rather than worrying about the fact that my son doesn't necessarily have all the friends I think he should have, right? But he's developing in a way for him that works. Even today, I'll admit, when I was working on some of my stuff, he was helping clean the house and doing some of those things because of that relationship that you're creating with them and showing that you need help and things with that, and not focusing on the things that are lacking, but focusing on what they enjoy doing. And so he's going to make dinner right now while I'm in here with you ladies.
Michelle, can you move forward a little bit so we can hear you? Yeah, thank you.
No problem. My microphone, the cats knocked my microphone off, and I haven't fixed the cord. And so I had an external microphone that they it was on my husband's desk, and they knocked it down and snapped the cord.
It's life, right?
Yeah, we have that.
Piggyback on the what Michelle is saying about the expectations and releasing some of that. And at Best Baby Beginnings, we have this little saying, and it's something that I need to come back to all the time. We bless, we build, and we benefit on the moments that we have, because that's all we have. And if we focus on those moments, then, we build up a lifetime with those. Some of those moments are going to be more significant than others, but often you don't know when it's happening. When you look back, you realize, wow, I built a lifetime on this. So it's almost like a habit, bless, build, and benefit from the moments you spend together. And release some of those huge expectations, like who is like a checkbooks, not even babies develop on a on a checklist or in clockwork. We're all different, and we need to make space for that so that our nervous systems can be happy.
Now, Irene, I have a question for you. So, a lot of these families, when you're thinking back to school, they might have a new baby now in the midst of that. And so, a lot of, times it's okay, first baby, it's, everything's about the baby and it's quiet. Well, now in the back to school things, maybe there's an older sibling, it's their first time going to school or kindergarten and dealing with that routine. So, there's this little tiny add on. Or now maybe it's you have a lot of busy stuff and you have older kids shuffling around for after school and you have this little baby in tow. So any suggestions for, I know those moments, though, also just how do you deal with it and make sure also that little baby is acclimating okay to the chaos?
That's when having routines that you really believe on is really important. I love to help my parents build routines that work. And like I said, decreasing the expectations and focusing on what is important. And also, it's including the whole family, because this is not just you and the baby. And we have a way of looking at things like the baby's completely dependent. No, we are collaborating with the babies because they are super smart creatures. And so are our babies. I mean, so are the rest of our kids, and they want to be included. So it is tricky, right? But we sometimes have to relax into just including the entire family. And like Michelle was saying, sometimes they end up taking a leading role. Like sometimes my older siblings, slightly older, will help with the baby's routine. And the baby's cue sometimes will help us all kind of just take a breath and let's relax here for a little bit and let's get on the rocking chair and let's read a story. And sometimes we get to catch up with what's really going on at that moment. But yeah, we need to build routines that we can rely on so that we can have those moments of.
Well, I think that's true that kids do very well with routines and schedules and expectations. It's just coming off of summer where it's been so much laid back, and maybe it's been relaxed bedtimes or, getting up when we want to. And I know we're saying be relaxed about back to school, but there is a certain element in this annual ritual that we've all been through many, many times that I don't want to say just a burnout, but there is that aspect of it. So one of the things that I, was thinking about was, back to school just doesn't mean setting the alarm 2 hours, getting up and getting to school on time. It's now having to establish the routines that work for your family, that people are good at. All of that, trying to take it, that pressure that we all do feel. So being mindful is great, but I'm still wondering how everybody's dealing with the push of back to school. I mean, just what it is.
Well, I'll piggyback off of that. I went to back to school night last night, where we'd meet the teachers and do all that stuff. And one of the moms there was just like, why do I feel this pressure to have like the days kids start school is this deadline, right? Like we have to have all these things done by this day. And that's not necessarily the case, right? But we put that on ourselves. So I want to take a step back and say, where did that come from for you if that's the way you're feeling? And what are the things that does it matter if they don't have the whole wardrobe? I know a lot of people like want to do wardrobe or something for school or things, but like, if they have one outfit that they want to start school with, but like, how do we take this pressure off that everything has to be done right away? And then the other question that I want to ask you is, for the morning routine and for getting that mindset into it is how can I take the decisions out of the morning? For instance, if your kids have trouble picking out clothes, that's the thing you get ready the night before. For us, breakfast was always a big fight. What are we going to eat, for breakfast? So we came up with a schedule, and we've actually been kind of rotating it this summer, trying to figure out what they didn't want oatmeal. We used to do oatmeal Mondays, and they didn't want oatmeal anymore. So, okay, well, you guys need to come up with a new recipe or a new idea for that. So I think they finally agreed on fruit parfaits. And then my son has a different schedule than them. So it's not that they have to have the same thing every day, but they have to have their own schedule. And so the more we can take decisions out of the morning, and they can decide, we print out the lunch schedule for the hot lunches for us. They let us print that out. So we print that out, put that up, and they can decide ahead of time, is this a hot lunch day? Is this a cold lunch day? And they can put a little note on there so they know, and they're in charge of making their own lunches. I just have to approve them. They can ask for help. But again, it's setting these systems up ahead of time. So just asking yourself that question of what decisions can we take out of the morning, that things are just in Automatic said that works for your family. Like if your kids aren't ready to make lunch, that's fine. They're too little or things. But then having like a list that they can choose from, saying that you can even do like a little magnet thing, like I want mac and cheese today or whatever works for their lunches, and then they can just pick that out themselves. You make it, and then that's just quicker. But the just ask yourself, what are the decisions that I don't have to make in the morning that can be pre-done?
Ellen, I like your comment there. Is anybody using like a big giant
Tracy?
where everything was on there? I know so many people use their phones now, but I'm wondering if anybody is still doing visual calendars for kids.
My husband gets big calendars printed from that he gets just from work, so they all say Milwaukee Tools on them. But we just put up there and put the schedule. And for the first time this year, I'm actually trying to color coordinate it because I didn't actually color coordinate it before, but by kids putting their on there. And then we also, this was my husband, not me doing. We have a big whiteboard, and he will put up the daily agenda of what their schedule is for the day, who's going to what activity and stuff. And then like if they need to do the cat box or things, like we kind of rotate that. And we didn't do it during the summer. It got erased, and he got very angry that we didn't keep using it during the summer. Be a little bit lax, but like when we went packing for we had to go up to grandma's house, I put the whole packing list of what they need to do on the whiteboard and put little check marks so they could just, as they were doing it, check it off. So I didn't have to keep checking on them, and I can just see, and they'd have to initial it or whatever as they were doing it, because we were trying to get ready to, like, if we have all this done by 2 o'clock, then we can leave. And they knew what they had to help with. So the more that we can give them tools, again, that work for them. My kids usually don't check off well. So for our morning routine, we just have a sheet where they kind of got used to these questions, but it's printed if they start to ask me questions. But I try check off sheets with them in the morning every day. It wasn't them, but occasionally for things like the packing list, that works for them. So we just use a check off sheet with questions like, am I having hot lunch or cold lunch? And then going through that for the day. And I can't think of on top, but it's part of my freebies. That list is in the freebie that I offer for Connecting Moms. So, and that link will be in here, so you can get that sample that I did, and then pick your own questions. What works and doesn't work? Maybe you don't have hot lunches or whatever works for you, and rearranging that. But again, just get back to that question: what decisions can I take out in the morning? It's what you need to ask yourself.
I think that's
I
a
really
great
like
point.
that. What decision can I take out of the morning?
Also deciding what is important to you, because you can be going through, like, it's great to have the systems with a calendar, but you can't be under the calendar pressure all the time. You gotta see, okay, over the week, what are the things that is important this week or this month? I mean, we do it with the little ones pre-verbal, because I do newborns. So we go like week by week and month by month. But we have to decide, okay, what's important with my routine this week? Is it sleep? Is it nutrition? Is it connecting with my children at certain times? Like when they come home from school, before they go to bed. I mean, those things, those are the moments that you get to build on, you know? So deciding what's important and having those scheduling tools, and it could be easy rather than having like, especially when you have nonverbal kids, you want to make it somewhat easy. You know, you're going to have to feed them so many times a day. You're going to have to get certain amount of hours of sleep. And based on that, you develop routines like your playtime routine, your bedtime routine. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it does have to address what is important to you as a family.
Yep.
Oh, that's just wonderful. And I'm loving all the comments in the chat.
Yeah,
So
I'm reading them too. They're great.
things like calendars and routines are like the mom's superpower to help keep everything going on. So that's super awesome. So it's just so wonderful to have everybody here and pitch in. So if there's something that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to share this amazing tip, or you actually love such a calendar, go for it. Yes,
I actually forgot to share one of the tips.
Oh, yeah.
The nonverbal ways that we communicate with each other. And I do have a cheat sheet for that. And I will put it on the chat so that you can have that available. Because when you have kids, it's not always about the words. That takes us about good 4 years to really express ourselves verbally. You know, there's so much more that is nonverbal, and we don't want to miss on that.
Oh,
that's so true.
Thing. You just need to unmute, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So just a quick remark. I do have to go for a while because someone is coming to see me in a couple of minutes. But So I was working all the time. My two sons were growing up, and I left home before they would leave for school. I mean, I made the lunches and things like that, but I also got up early and usually did yoga in the morning. Well, it was really wonderful to me when at one day, both boys came downstairs and they were seeing me doing a headstand. And so next thing I knew, they wanted to do a headstand. So I got to teach them how to do a headstand. And then they started doing yoga with me every morning, which was really just a wonderful, wonderful time. And I enjoyed it so much. And of course, it was really good for me. And it was good for all three of us to do it together. So that was a routine that took good care of me as well.
Yeah. And
Yes.
there's your point. And that's one thing we bring up all the time in workshops for moms. You have to take care of yourself, mom. And wow, for you to do that, I can't even imagine getting up any earlier to do that. But that is awesome. But whatever is going to be something that you take care of yourself, because we say it all the time here, you know, you've got to have your oxygen mask on first, got to take care of yourself, do something for you. And that just, especially getting through this stressful, doesn't have to be always stressful, but this annual ritual that we go through. How fun. I'm glad you shared that.
Thank you.
And the
Well,
one thing that story illustrates for me tremendously, Lauren, is that we always say we lead by example, but also the kids always go for connection and they will imitate you. And those two tools you can always use to modify everything. I mean, because you know, you're the lead there. And that's wonderful.
True.
Well, I think it really, you put out the nail on the head, Lauren, because it really comes back to that role model, that we need to be those role models. And we can't be, if we're not doing something that fulfills us in the morning. And that's why that's where actually I threw the bonus in the chat right now with how to reclaim your morning, because as moms, we need to set intention to our day first and not let the outside distraction come in before we decide how we want to start our day. And I even had one mom saying, well, my son sleeps next to me most time and I can't do that. Well, then pretend you're asleep still and just in your mind, like set your day, take a couple deep breaths, set that intention. And again, it doesn't take more than a minute to do these things, but we need to set that for ourselves, and they follow after our examples. They see what we do and they emulate that. So when we have a good morning and we're going through a routine and doing the things, they start to do that as well. Again, we need to be those models for them. We need to show them what a happy, healthy adult looks like.
And I love you all being models for each other. I will return. Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
But, you know, Lauren also brings up, and Michelle, you too, that when the child is having a really rushed kind of morning, that can also trigger our behavior. But then we weren't frustrated, but we can't become frustrated. And as they're, you know, becoming more frustrated, being able to kind of pull back from that too, and not get embroiled in all of that. And it's usually over hair brushing. I mean, you know, it's that kind of stuff that can just set off everybody's day. And certainly as a teacher, I see that all the time. You know, and the kids unfortunately come in a bad mood and the parents are in a bad mood because of the morning, you know, what was happening in the morning, and sets everybody off. So if we can just take a step back, I had posted a mom's essay in the Facebook group about that very topic of how she was getting triggered and had to step back because then her behavior is mirroring her child instead of going the opposite way.
Well, I love that you brought up triggers, Tracy, because we have to remember that whatever's triggering us is something in us, is something that we need to work on. And so when we feel triggered, it's almost just take a moment to identify what it is and try to see what is going on in your body, what can you do, what's going on. And then even if you can't do anything at that moment, you will be triggered again by that same, whatever needs to be triggering you is going to keep triggering you. So even if you don't do it right away, but if you just start to be aware and just take a step to start noticing what's triggering me, why am I being triggered? And then once you identify it, then you can start doing something about it. And that's, And that's the same thing we model with our kids, is showing them when they're angry, when they're upset. Well, where'd that come from? What's happening in your body? What's going on? I mean, my son can go from 0 to angry in like 20 seconds. Like he's just got no like, and so we've been really still trying to focus on, even as much as we can, what's going on in your body first. Where is that tension starting? When can you start to identify it? And the quicker we start to identify it, then removing ourselves from the situation or doing something to, that's where all those tools come in that we talk about a lot in self-care. Is once our cup is filled, then we're able to, once we feel triggered, respond rather than react. As soon as our kids start to trigger us, a lot of times we start yelling back or something, but when we can have a full cup and respond instead, it makes all the difference.
Mhm. So I want to touch on one thing that this is from a teacher point of view, and I've taught every grade from pre-K to middle school. And it's particularly at this time of the year is everybody's short on sleep and trying to get to sleep routines. But you know who's also short on it are the teachers. And teachers have already been working very hard, also having to get up earlier. And, you know, it's been maybe 12-hour days, but your evening is not your own when you're a teacher and you've had all this prep and meetings, you know, and you really do just want to get to your class and have the kids and stuff. But when you teach older kids, well, I really noticed this in teaching on Zoom, because the little kids were like in the mornings bright and you could say hello and they're, hi, Mrs. Cheney, and all, and you talk to your middle school kids and it was like, but part of it is they're tired. And when you get to, we don't really focus on high school so much here because we're talking about younger kids, but really seeing through grandson how much sleep he really needed, like 10 hours a day, like a cat. And it's, if we really, I know it's hard to get the kids, if you haven't been on an early sleep schedule for summer, but this time of the year, so the triggers and tears and conflicts, and you know, there are conflicts at school with kids as they're learning to deal with other kids and getting back into routine. And I mean, we don't need to have textbooks thrown at us because we don't want to do it, but it's hard because we're asking them to do something there's a lot of it that they don't want to do that's in part of this. So biggest thing I can say is if you can all, parents and kids, and I won't talk about teachers, but can get enough sleep, it really does help. And you know, where I really noticed it, like in first graders. So in kindergarten, they got a rest during the day, but in first grade, it's, you know, a regular school day for those little kids. That's a huge adjustment. And you see them, they finally get on the bus and they fall asleep. They're so tired. And just to realize how tired your children are, they may be really happy about school. Some kids may be very anxious. Some kids, you know, we need to be aware of their anxiety levels. But if we cannot schedule a whole lot of stuff right now until we get back into that routine, especially for kids that are normally night owls, and we're asking them, we have to change their whole system here. So we have a whole school of a lot of sleep deprived people, and it's just kind of to have patience with that and do our best to get everybody onto a new sleep schedule.
Amen to that. Oh my goodness. So, curious with you all, is there something that you would like to, you know, we kind of touched on the theme and issues this time of year. So is there something that they might not know about school, or something you just don't know and you would love to share, kind of from, you know, each of your experts' point of view? Is what's something these moms might not know, and it might just be the one magical thing to take away?
Can I go ahead and start? Because I think there's a lot of emphasis on testing and academic knowledge, and the fact that we think that this test determining our children's potential intelligence, which it's really, really an artificial way of measuring things. So what we need to know is that nervous systems sometimes need to recharge, and actually they do. That's the way we're built. We recharge by playing. We do need sleep and nutrition, but we recharge by playing and connecting with each other. So this is the way that we're built. and having some other artificial, too much of that can be counterproductive. So really, as a family, you need to really be clear on what's important and know that your kids are not necessarily wasting time when they're playing or when you're connecting with each other. I mean, these are the moments when your kids will actually be worse off if they're not connecting with you. So that time is not wasted. Playing is also the way the nervous system connection increases. The synapses actually get more receptive when you're playing. So these are not wasted moments. It's just that there's so much pressure now on parents with all this, checklists and all that, that we also need time to come away from that and then decide what's important to you.
I want to just add something, because a lot of, especially with moms that are driving their kids around a lot of sporting events and stuff, a great way to connect with them is using that car time as conversation time and finding ways or games or things that you guys can play together rather than just trying to zone out and doing your best you can. I know we're all tired at that point and the driving's hard, but the more that we can use the time that we have as connection, the deeper the connections come with the kids. And so it's just doing our best to put using those times that we don't think about. And for instance, a lot of times you get frustrated at a red light. So a lot of times we'll each call each other out on it and say, red light time, and we have to share something we're grateful for. And so it's just finding those little tidbits that help the kids kind of get on there, and whatever is going to help you connect with each other more, and using the time that you have, even if you're in the car, right? Because that's going to happen a lot with the sporting events and all that. But be creative with the time that you do have with them.
So I would say, as a teacher, communicate early with the school and with the teacher. Don't hesitate about that. And although this is I'm going to make a sad commentary on society right at the moment, but we are seeing a lot of family breakup, and it does have impacts on kids. And I know it's a private matter, but if you can let the teachers know what your child is going through, especially, we do notice behavior changes, and sometimes we can get a phone call to you, but then, don't want to feel like it's prying. I think the other thing about having early contact with school is it's going to be a while before everybody in a class gets tested on reading or, all the things that we do in getting school started. But there's such a thing as a summer slump, if there hasn't been any reading going on, and yet reading's so vital to success in school. And if your child was struggling with something at the end of the year, I would mention that, and I would be pushing to get some, if you can have some testing on it, but at least let the teacher know, and maybe specialists know, or coaches, on another issue, something about your child that is so helpful to know what's going on, and that you want to have communication back, not just when there's, a problem, but you do want to know about those things. Is, school personnel are trained on this, and we also really care about your child and your child's success in school. And so having that feeling of open communication, and that it's not a burden to hear about those things. Now, really, it can make everything just go so much more smoothly. And then it's also letting the teacher be able to, if your child's having a moment, being able to kind of know what's going on in the background and be able to respond accordingly. So my thing about school is, please don't hesitate to contact us about anything that's going on that would really make school more successful for your child.
I have to agree with that, just because being a teacher, sometimes you don't want to, like Tracy was saying, you don't want to assume things. You don't necessarily want to, and when the teacher calls home, the parent always, there's always this connotation of this negative aspect a lot of times, and it's not necessarily supposed to be negative. But I think as a parent, when we reach out a little bit and try to be a little bit more open and open that line of communication with that teacher, then it just sets this tone that, oh, we can have this back and forth relationship, versus like, oh, should I contact them? Are they going to be responsive? There have been lots of times where I had contacted parents that they don't even respond at all. So it's nice to know up front when those things come, and then also teachers are more willing then to send more information about positive things as well when they know it's wanted. Because a lot of parents don't want any response from them. They're like,
True.
no news is good news, right? But if they know and you want to know more about your kid, the more you open up that relationship sooner rather than later, the more you're going to make it just better all around.
Exactly. That's what we're about. We want to have that. And your child is in a group of, well, it depends. I had classes of 40. So, I mean, your child is in a group of kids and all different parenting styles, beliefs, everything's different. And we have to meld, a learning environment where every kid can be successful. So the more that you are a partner with that, that's really great for the kids. But I want to do a little flip on that is you don't need to text your child all during the school day. I mean, really, I've been in schools where they just finally said no phones at all because it just is so disruptive. And I'd happened to mention this to Ren, and you gave me a statistic when you're interrupted, how long it takes to get back.
It's like 26 minutes, like when you're in the flow and then something comes around and you got to get right back into that zone.
And you're doing that to your child and the other kids in the class and to the teacher. So I know we've had like constant contact in the summertime, but if we can let this go, if it's really important, like you forgot to put the gym shoes in, they forgot to take their lunchbox, I mean, take it to the front office and let it go in and they'll decide when the appropriate time is. But this constant thing of texting kids with younger and younger kids having phones, it really is a disruptive thing. And we are making them tethered to their screens, which we want. We want them to be off of that and being able to do school and not having that level of disruption for them. So if you can do it, I'd recommend that.
On that note, I'm going to jump on both of what you were saying. First of all, the relationship is the most important component there, right? But also our communication is artificially via the screen and the telephone, but it really needs to be body led. Particularly when we have young children in the house that are pre-verbal. You got me thinking about that, Michelle, where you're talking about the mom driving the kids around, and I'm thinking this baby's in the carrier. When you have an infant in the carrier, once again, we have a wonderful invitation to become what we're supposed to be, body-led. So we want to get out of the carriers and onto the floor. And if we have to do that as a family, then we do it. Because our children are body learners until they're 9 years old. But particularly those little ones, that first year, you don't want to have your baby in a carrier most of the day. You want to be getting out of that carrier at least 3 times a day and onto that floor and doing tummy time. And your toddlers can be wonderful help with that. It helps everybody, whether they're playing or napping, but that just needs to happen.
Yeah, you do hear, like my brother who was number 4, who doesn't have very much in his baby book. It's like, everything is about the first kid and what happened to me? We don't want our extra little ones feeling like I was ignored.
Okay, well, what we're going to do is we have in the Facebook group was shared some tips. So I'm just going to go through these because there's some interesting ones you might not have think about. And then if you experts have something that you really want to say about that list, there's like 10 of them. So we'll go through it fairly quickly, though definitely if there's something that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to share on that, feel free. So our first list for back to school tip number 1, the FBI advises moms do not put the name of your child on the outside of their backpack. So I think we've heard that, or well, I'm getting some surprises. So yes, definitely not to know that. I know I was actually working at a school and the celebrity had their daughter's name on it. And I was like, oh, there's such and such's child. So anyway, I was excited from that point. However, in general, that makes your child much more easy that anybody can go and say, hey, Susie, your mom just got hurt. I need to take you to go see her and such and such. So backpacks, put their name on the inside, so once they unzip it, then you could see it. Or the other one, which is, you can put it where they wear it so it's not visible, though same thing, if they leave their backpack down, it's still visible for some very alert person to spy their name on the backpack.
And so important for kids that are walkers. Our older elementary kids get to start walking to school. Part of the safety tips that you're teaching them. I mean, this would be one that they're not responsible for, but you as a parent is.
So tip number 2, which we've addressed, here we've got another one about first day of school with Facebook posts holding their kids' names and grades and schools and teachers. I mean, that's definitely what people do. I'd say, be careful with that. If you know your friends list or things like that, I'd say, having their school name and teacher name, is that really necessary for a social media post? Maybe you take a photo, just this is, Jimmy in 3rd grade and who wants to be a such and such, and then you have another one for your collection that includes the name and the teachers, things like that, because there are wackos. Or at least at the very thing is, make sure that something with that much private info is on private mode, not public share mode. So number 3, which is a really fun one I loved on this list, buy at least one cool school supply, maybe even for the whole class. So making sure that your kid feels that they're cool and important and they have that thing is a very big deal to kids.
And as far as an expensive, I'm just going to put it out there for spending money on supplies. Okay. As a teacher, even if you got everybody a Ticonderoga pencil, that's the best pencil, or a pink pearl eraser. Erasers are horrible and they ruin their papers and everything else. And don't go for the cheap ones. Those branded things, I'm not plugging anybody in particular. I'm just telling you what works and what I insisted upon in my classrooms, because otherwise it is a nightmare. So just getting everybody something that's really would make a difference like that. It's a little gift, but what a difference. And I'm not plugging Crayola, but I'm saying when I let parents, if I don't specify brands and we get the El Cheapos, those kids have a horrible coloring time for the rest of the year. So I'm just saying that really makes a difference. And that's true on musical instruments too. The kids think it's them and it's the cheapo instrument. But anyway.
Well, speaking of supplies, on that note would be just, especially as right now as school supply sales are ending, there's a lot of things on clearance. Like, take advantage of that and just keep a box of extra school supplies you can either use for mid-year when things can be refilled, or even next year, because a lot, if it doesn't get used, a lot of it just sits very nicely. But now is a great time when, like, you have Walgreens and different stores that are Walmart that are going on clearance, and to get rid of some of the bigger stock stuff before they take it down. And then even the grocery stores, I know the Pick and Save by Us has a lot of stuff on clearance as well too, and you can get really good deals and just keep it in a bin. And as I have a drawer downstairs that the kids, like last year we had to use it twice. The kids ran out of stuff, or the classroom was asking for more school supplies, sent it with them. And then it wasn't a big deal. And the kids were so happy, like, oh, Bree's the teacher, I'm so excited. And
Yes.
like, it was just the stuff.
But that's true on glue sticks. I mean, I'm not kidding. It just makes such a difference just to spend a little more to get those brands. And those brands, I have to say, are worth it. And what Michelle, what you were saying too, the creative projects get sent home to you as a parent, right? It's not happening at school. You are in charge of all the creative projects. So if you are buying some extra stuff, yeah, Elmer's, Angie, you're right. Elmer's glue sticks, only thing. Putting some supplies aside, knowing that you're going to do some projects. So getting good markers, even the little kit stuff like the pom-poms, all this stuff, you're going to have projects that you're in charge of. So that's a great thing, Michelle, to put a supply box aside for mid-year or projects.
The dollar store works great for all those little crafty projects. So
Yeah.
And then this leads us to the next tip, which is label each and everything. So don't put your name on the kid's backpack front and center, though on their little pencils and their this or their eraser. I got clever and will take like the masking tape with the name. So I'll write the name in Sharpie on the masking tape, and then you can tape it around the pencil or stick it on the eraser, or use your Sharpie to write on the side of the eraser the kid's name. So things like that, labels help.
Tennis shoes, coats. Okay, at every school, there is a
Yes.
mound of lost and found, and kids never recognize their stuff and they never pick it up. Every classroom teacher, they bring the kids out. Nobody picks up a thing, and yet it's a mountain, which will end up getting donated. Okay, but the office will really help. If you put your name on stuff, you might actually get it back because they will deliver it back to the classroom. I mean, it's just astounding. And I don't know what it is about kids, but they don't pick it up. So either you are remembering every single thing your kid wore to school that day and everything they've taken to school, or label it. And it's just amazing to me how many generations I've taught, and this is kind of a consistent thing with kids. They do not pick up their lost and found.
Especially sweatshirts, because they will take those off and just leave them on the playground.
Yep. And when it's hot, when we're in transition, weather transitions, going from hot weather to cool in the mornings, you lose all that stuff. And then the kids are so excited to get their mittens, but by recess time, you're taking them off and they're everywhere, all over the, all over the playground.
Oh my gosh, they are crazy.
It
Okay,
is.
tip number 5 is choosing a right size durable backpack. And also I can say get one that your kid likes, because that's a huge one status thing and they've really got to love it. And that's going to be like their number one possession. So, and it seems to always need to also have a very good lunchbox. Always seem to be a very huge necessity of making sure they have their very perfect lunchbox. Also seem to be a very high importance for kids.
And to get the more durable backpacks, sometimes you can't get the designs and stuff they want. So another roundabout way of that is my kids like the little like stuffy, the little tiny ones you can attach and indicate that that's theirs. And so giving, letting them pick something out if you're going to get like, because they got just plain backpacks because they're more durable than necessarily like the character ones. But yeah, you can accessorize it with a few things that they get to pick out, and that helps a lot.
And especially parents with little kids that are just starting back, like kindergartners and first graders. When you get, and I know that they have the cute things that they want, but a lot of times that's throwaway merchandise and the zippers go bad. And you have to make sure your child can handle that zipper. And yeah, they're not bringing home huge textbooks, but there's going to always be papers that are coming. And a cheap zipper is such a frustration to a little kid. And they're in a hurry, and a teacher's like, hurry up, and everything. So it's just one of those things, just mentioning it.
And the backpacks, they're actually, the way you wear those backpacks is actually going to affect your child's posture. So it's really important that they wear them squarely on their backs symmetrically, and it's not too heavy. I forgot my standards, but it's supposed to be at least no more than 20% of their body weight. And you want to have it centered because it's actually training your spine and your gait. So
And also not too big, because they'll stuff it full of stuff.
You see them falling over.
Yeah.
To make sure that we finish on time too, I'm going to bug into these.
Okay.
So number 6, it's signing up for your school's email and text alerts. So that's always very helpful. The other thing that you might not think to do is exchanging phone numbers with other parents of the kids at your school, or it could be their sports team. Getting contact info, super helpful. Number 8.
Ren, 2 things on that. Is you can also, what we've done with some of the groups, create a Facebook group for moms for that class. And then they add other moms, and so when you have 3 different classes and the kids change throughout the years, they're not always necessarily in the same class. And then what was the other tip? There was one other thing. What was the other one, the tip before that?
It's signing up for your school's alerts.
Oh, the other thing is, like, for instance, our school actually has like a Google Calendar. So you can add that to your calendar as well. So your school may have that as well. And that comes in handy that I never have to look at, like, put it in manually. And the holidays, all the days they have off is just automatically plugged into my calendar by looking for their Google Calendar.
And it is surprising how many parents will show up with kids on the teacher's work day because they didn't catch it. And now we've got a kid at school, or they don't have babysitting. But I wanted to add one thing about contacts is if you've had any change, we don't think about changing all the contact stuff at school. But especially if your kids are now going between two households, put one email, a joint one, because you have parents saying, I didn't get this, and I don't know that that's happening. So if you can make one email that all school stuff goes and team everybody, so both those parents can see it, it's just going to cut down on a lot of frustration.
Very smart tip. And that's actually another tip that goes along, which is establish communication early with the teachers in school. We kind of touched on that, though, just to really nail it home is anything, good, bad, otherwise, just establishing that communication. I always liked getting the text numbers of my kids' teachers, and I wouldn't overuse it, and I'd ask their permission, though it was really nice to be able to text the teacher. Okay, and then another tip, which we've addressed as well, is acknowledge your child's possible anxiety as well as yours. And I would say Irene's definitely a queen of that, talking about the nervous system. And so there's probably a lot of jitters going on for everybody involved. And
Kindness goes a long way with that.
And our last of these 10, which I thought was very clever, is cleaning out your kids' closet and drawers. And so there's stuff from last year or even, earlier in the summer that might not have fit. And then surprise, they're getting dressed and it doesn't fit, or they lost to something, or it has a crazy stain. So doing that and getting almost like a spring cleaning, though it's a back to school. And the nice thing, then you have room for all the new goodies that they got for going back to school.
Now, summer is a magical time for kids growing. And if you just bought bigger size shoes, just figure the socks don't fit anymore.
Great point. Okay, so before we wrap up and then go on to our women's circle, is there any last speed round of advice that you would like to send off to parents for their back to school season?
Honestly, just the biggest thing is moms, you really have to take care of yourselves first. And you need to be able to, as much as you can, respond rather than react to what the kids are going to do, because they're going to be tired. They're going to throw tantrums. They're going to do all those things when they're tired, they're hungry, getting used to a new schedule. But the more you get into your own nervous system and prepare for that in terms of taking care of yourself, of getting up 5 minutes, even 5 minutes earlier, just to sit and get yourself ready for that. And again, asking that question, what decisions can I take out of the morning? Setting those two things up before school, just to start that back, and give yourselves grace. It's going to be a week or two to get back, and things are going to go awry, but just take the deep breaths when you need them and just come back to it, because you always can take control of your breath. Remember, it's the one thing in your body that you can take control of, but then release back. And when you get that chance to take control, it can change everything for you in that moment.
All I will say is having two teachers in the family, we had to make sure on Sundays, cook 2 casseroles, and all the shopping got done, and the lunches and all the vegetables are cut up, or whatever is needed, everything on Sunday, because we just didn't have evenings. And especially if you stay for sports, there's no evening time. So we did everything on Sundays to get us through the week. And by Friday, okay, everything is pretty sad. So then you could have a pizza.
Be easy on your expectations. Make sure you prioritize rest, play, and connection.
I love that. Well, thank you all so much. And for our wonderful participants, if anybody wants to chime in, you can pop it in the chat or unmute yourselves.
Yeah, unmute.
Yeah,
So Lauren and Jennifer, Ellen, Angie, thank you.
Wonderful suggestions and great conversation. Thank you so much.
Now we do invite you can use the same Zoom link here. We have a women's circle coming right after. And Michelle is actually the leader of that, and I will let her kind of prep that a little bit. Oops, you're unmuted. So you need,
Of course I am. The Women's Circle is just a place to invite you ladies to communicate. And it's just a place for us to, again, get that self-care and a place where we can join together to lift each other up and figure out our passions and what we want to do and how do we fill our own cups first. And that's what the Women's Circle is all about. So I invite you to come join us. We'll start in about 5 minutes or so. Give ourselves a little bit of break before we get started.
Fantastic. And you don't need to be a mom to come to the Women's Circle. It is for all of our female identifying friends to just come together in some sisterhood and support. So much
Agree.
love to you all. We also have the free gifts. I know we've put them in the chat, so each of our speakers have some goodies. Also, if you're listening to this on the replay or recording, you'll find the links for those goodies below as well. So just look around and we'll make sure you're connected. You can also be in our Facebook group, our Workshop for Mom Sisterhood. You're going to find lots of tips, replays in there, and can connect with our speakers. So much love to you all. We'll stop this broadcast and we will see you on next month for our next panel. And we always do our Women's Circle right after. Bye, friends.
So last Thursday, that will be the 28th of September.
Welcome.